I want you all to think about the future, to imagine what that looks like, because I spend a huge amount of my time doing it, and I think probably most of you do too. But when you have to think about the infrastructure and the architecture that underpins that future, if, my head starts to explode, and I imagine, well, I hope yours doesn't too, but I think it's incredibly difficult for us as a group of people who are thinking about what the next 10, 15, 20 years looks like, to really understand what that might look like. So I run a practice I have been doing for 25 years nearly, building architecture, building what I hope will be a future that is better, that is built better than is now. I have been asked a year and a half ago to chair an independent design panel to hold HS2 to account on their design vision. I'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. And I have pleasure of sitting on the NIC with Phil and a group of other people who are, again, thinking hard about what the future looks like. And I would urge you, in the same way that Phil did, to please think about transport being something that unlocks regenerational opportunities, not just connects. And that's, I think, very much a part of the report that we've put together. So a while back, I wrote a piece, an article suggesting that the UK had lost its infrastructure mojo. And I think I was reflecting on a couple of decades where there'd been a sort of huge amount of underinvestment, sort of a sense that we have a real antiquated infrastructure, but in particular a stuck-in-the-mud mentality. And I think that there is an exhausting bureaucratic system in which it's easy to choose the path of least resistance. And that results, I think, in something at the best which can be a compromise, and at the worst, which is wishy-washy. So why can't we think big? Why can't we deliver cost-effective solutions to big projects? And why can't they look and feel good? Well, the truth is we do. And we have the expertise. We have extraordinary expertise in this country, not only architects, engineers, builders, contractors. We know how to do this. We're just doing it everywhere else but here. And it's absolutely time for us as, within the UK to take a grasp of the abilities that we have and do something with it. And I think that actually we're beginning to understand, and I think particularly with, with initiatives like the NIC, that infrastructure isn't just about the physical. It's about our attitude to how the world works, our place within it, and how that is actually embodied in the things that we build. But we need imagination. And here's where I think we need creatives. Creative people have the ability to problem solve. And I think, with all due respect to engineers and those of you who build big infrastructure, you need to perhaps, at the beginning of projects, think a little bit wider, have a little bit more of a perspective about how and what and why you are actually making those decisions. Are you connecting A to B in the quickest, most efficient, cheapest way possible? Or are you connecting A to B in order to unlock C? And if that's the case, why aren't you thinking about that right at the beginning? And for HS2, I think one of the biggest, it is the biggest infrastructure project the UK has undertaken. Actually, don't quote me on that, I always get it wrong, but it's big. It's big, and it needs to be done incredibly quickly and within a very tight cost budget. And HS2 have understood that in order to do that, in order to not make mistakes early on, that will cost them long term. They've asked to have a group of creative thinkers right early on in the process to ask them the questions that they will need to answer perhaps 5 or 10 years' time, to make sure that they are questioning themselves early on, to make sure that they're not designing 3 parapets, because actually you need one for the guy or woman who's maintaining it. You need another one to stop people throwing things onto the track, and then you need another one to stop the train. Why do you need 3? Why can't you design 1? There are very, very simple questions that people aren't asking. And I find myself continually asking the exam question. And actually, by doing that and by focusing early on problems and issues that may or may not happen in the future, I think we can save money. My role is as chair of the design panel, an independent group of people who will be making sure that High Speed 2 and those involved in High Speed 2 deliver on their design vision. Success is what great design will achieve if everyone benefits, and not only benefits but enjoys this project. We need to engage with those communities, and we need to make sure that we inspire people through the excellence of our creative talent. We need to make sure that this project benefits everybody in Britain. Innovation is hugely important, and in order to turn innovation and ideas and vision into reality, you need people who can help you do that. Success for place means that it's fit for purpose, that it's sensitive to its context. We need to have national pride in this project, but we have a sort of sense of local ownership. The smallest elements and the biggest of schemes will meet really rigorous environmental standards and collectively add to our really strong cultural and natural heritage. The challenge is to join up the here and now with the future. We're talking about putting a premium on personal time, on those customers that will use this service. We need to understand that their time is precious, and we also need to make the time to design, to turn great expectation and to turn great imagination into reality. I think most importantly, this is about designing a system that stands the test of time. We are designing for the needs of future generations. So I chair a panel of approximately 40 people from all walks of the design industry, as I said before: engineers, architects, landscape designers, procurement expert, developers, you name it. And what we do is we are acting as a critical friend to HS2. So we give design reviews, we give mentoring, we offer advice, but we're not there to criticize, we're there to enable and help. That's not to say that we aren't critical when we don't like seeing things that we feel are wasteful or difficult, or will end up with a project that isn't good, it isn't being delivered from good to great. So for us, the absolute importance is to make sure that we are pushing the boundaries of design continually. And for me, in particular, how do you then connect people in place? How do you connect these big projects back to the people that they affect, back to the people in place on the ground? And that's something that I've spent a long time doing with my architecture, through my work with DRMM. And I just want to tell you, or talk to you a little bit about 3 projects, and I'm going to pick out specific items of those projects to make an example about how good design can change and make a difference. So if we're talking about community, and we look at the slide at the top that was the original plan for the project in King's Cross. It's the first phase of apartments built in King's Cross. So that the top was the competition scheme, and we the original competition scheme. We won the project by saying, It's not good enough to have 10% single aspect. You know, what matters to people is actually being able to look out of their window, not with just one view, but two views. If you're living nowadays in smaller apartments, it's about what you look out at. It's about what you can see. And it's not only about what you can see, it's about how you engender a sense of community. So do you buy do you borrow a cup of sugar from somebody right at the end of that corridor and then walk all the way back? Or do you try to engender a sense of community and identity by making smaller communal areas, having towers, small towers, small areas of clusters of apartments where you can meet people on the stairs. You can have and communicate. And in doing so, you open up the aspect from, in this case, 10% to 80%. And you also make a public realm which is much bigger and much better. And nowadays, I think, when you're living in the ways that you do with the redensification of London, you need to think hard about the public realm. Elephant and Castle, how do you regenerate estates that are and have been really difficult, complex places to live, but local communities feel completely attached to? And how do you do it in a way that engenders confidence with communities that have consultation fatigue? And I think that, there's a lot to be said about big projects, consultation fatigue, making people think that actually what they have to say and what they want to say is valid and is taken into account. Well, one thing you can do is say, let's offer new routes through these complexes. Let's think about it on a much bigger scale that is about connectivity. And you can also think about contextual. When we talk about HS2, we say we want a regional, we want a national railway transport system that reflects our national identity but has a kind of regional dialect. How do you do that? Well, architects are good at that because they look at the existing condition, in this case the Peabody estate that runs next to the Elephant and Castle. And we picked up, for instance, we picked up on the colours here and we changed the bricks in order to reflect, in order to fit into the environmental context. So it is possible in small ways to think about these big issues that you can then tie back into these big projects. I wanted to show you one last thing because I thought it was just before lunch. And this is a house that moves on railway tracks. And unfortunately, the video didn't work. But what I want to say, because this is a house where the walls and the roof move, so at the top there, it shows what it's like in the morning when the sun comes in and heats the house. And then throughout the day, you can move it to enclose and keep the warmth. And the point is that you can deliver extraordinary, interesting, and crazy ideas in a way that actually gives joy and enlightens people's lives without costing extra money. This building is so environmentally astute that it sells its energy back to the grid. And you can clean your teeth in the morning out in the fresh air. So I just make an impassioned plea to say design doesn't cost extra money. Design offers good value if creative thinkers are bought in early on. It's absolutely crucial that we move into the next 5 and 10 years outside of this kind of money, economics means everything. It doesn't. We need to lift ourselves out of the misery of Brexit, frankly, and I think that we can do that by adding joy and a little bit of that brilliant British maverickness that we have. And we should be able to do it in our big infrastructure projects. We should be able to do it in a way that connects these big projects to the everyday and offers joy and happiness and good value to the British public. Thank you.